This is Impact 10 for Movies That Matter, the series about the movies that helped change the world. Today's topic is movies that gave us hope, and I'm joined by Christopher and Garret, and we're talking about the movies that helped us believe a better world is possible. Hi everyone. I'm planning this movie, talking to the team, talking to my friends. One sort of subgenre of film came up a few times when talking about hope, which was the inspiring teacher movie. Now, there are a lot to choose from, but I think the one that really stands out is 1988's Stand and Deliver. Produced and starring Edward James Olmos, it took him 7 years to make the film. It's written and directed by Ramon Menendez and also stars a largely Latino cast. And the movie follows the true story of a Bolivian immigrant, Jaime Escalante, who quits his job to teach math at an underperforming East LA high school. He goes on to form the school's first AP Calculus class and ends up being so successful that the Educational Testing Standards Company, who administers the AP exam, they accuse the students of cheating. And in the true story, some people still have doubts about whether or not the children cheated. It's irrelevant because they agreed to be retested under heavy proctoring, and all the students who were retested passed again. And I think, one of the sad facts when you're talking about inspiring teacher movies, especially the ones where a teacher comes into an inner city school, is we fall immediately into the white savior trope. The follow-up films to these in the 90s were Dangerous Minds and Freedom Writers, which were solidly in that sort of white savior mode. And so what's great about Stand and Deliver is the teacher, it's not a fish out of water story. He's a Latino himself. He is an immigrant himself, like many of the students or their parents. He speaks Spanish. He understands their culture. The other issue with this movie, one of the reasons that it is so important, and sadly, I can't believe this is the second time I have to say this after doing smoke signals in the last episode. But, there's sort of two paths in my mind to Impact 10, huge social impact. One is this sort of watershed movie that blows open the doors and, it allows people and stories that haven't been popularized before to come onto film. That is not the case with Stand and Deliver. Despite its critical success, Edward James Olmos was nominated for a Best Actor Oscar and box office success. It was just as hard to make a movie about Latinos in America after Stand and Deliver as poor Edward James Olmos faced when he tried to make Stand and Deliver. So sadly, the impact is that this is one of the only ones. And I think, obviously we care a lot about own voices in movies that matter, but that's what makes the movie so good. The cultural specificity with which the story is told. But beyond that, and I think, what this is all about is the fact that this movie just has a very sort of schmaltzy hallmark hope message of, believe in yourself and work hard and you can achieve anything. And the movie just absolutely nails the message in a way that, again, doesn't come across as like, not to dump on Hallmark movies, they have their place, but, it is a very hopeful and inspiring message. And I think partly because one thing I think that's really critical about the movie's success is that it does show the whole cheating scandal aspect. If you had all the students pass the AP exam, fade to black, roll credits, movie over, that would be so unrealistic and it would be problematic. But it shows, you're still going to have to face these additional hurdles. You can believe in yourself and you can work hard, but the rest of society is not going to be so easy to accept your success. And I think without that coda, it really wouldn't have been as good a movie as it was. And despite the fact that that I rail all the time on, individuals can solve huge systemic problems like poverty and public education. I just don't know how you can't feel hopeful, and you need these stories to be told to find out that fully a quarter of the Mexican American students who passed the AP Calculus exam in the 80s were from Garfield High School, where the movie is set. And to know that even in the darkest times, even when there are these overwhelming systemic problems, there are places where, human potential is being realized. And that is just a necessary and important reminder that we all needed. And while I can't fact check Edward J. Olmos on him saying that this is the most viewed movie of all time, but, it is still being shown in classrooms today because of its message and because of the students it inspires, and honestly, because it really inspired a lot of people to be teachers as well. And so I think the legacy of Stand and Deliver is that it teaches you that while discrimination is real, human potential is not completely lost, even though we have some real problems in this country.
Hi everybody, Garret here, and today I'm here to talk about one of my personal favorite movies that instills hope in me, Erin Brockovich. Erin Brockovich is a 2000 critically acclaimed drama directed by Steven Soderbergh, starring Julia Roberts and co-starring Albert Finney. And Erin Brockovich is based on a true story of a young law clerk who wants to take on this water company who has been poisoning people's waters for years. Erin ends up finding out that the company is responsible for many of the medical conditions that's been going on in a small town of Hinckley, California. She then goes on a quest to prove that this has been happening, and then goes to great lengths to help out the citizens of this small town. Erin is a single mother struggling with having to take care of her kids and also a newfound identity as a law clerk. She has no law school experience, yet somehow still seems to persevere and has a great ability to communicate and interact with other individuals. Why this movie instills hope in me is it's because it's about a story of it doesn't matter who you are, how much knowledge you have, how much money you have, that being a good person and wanting to do the right thing is always going to win out in the end. And it shows that Erin's dedication to other humans is something that I think we should all aspire to. But the reason it gives you hope is because it's not just the end when somebody tells you it's over. The citizens of this town were told that they would not be able to really engage anymore with the water company, and the water company had already won. Erin came in and really was able to show this town to hope again, to give them some ways that they could engage with themselves and be, find some peace after all the time of all these terrible things that had happened to them. It really kind of shows me that, if you're willing to fight hard enough for something you believe in and that you really care about people, the outcome is going to be desired. And it was the largest case in history of U.S. history that set the precedent for the most money awarded in a case, in a single case, And it was crazy to think that, this wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for one person's determination, if it hadn't been for Erin Brockovich and the real life story. This movie has some great acting and really sets the tone with, I think wonderful storytelling, editing ability. But the story itself is what really sticks out, and how Erin was willing to fight. She didn't quite fit in with everybody else. She was a beauty queen and a single mom, and nobody thought much of her because she was just this pretty girl who didn't have much experience in life. But she pushed herself to care about other people, and she continued to have hope that there was something else out there. And then she gave other people hope, and she gave the whole town a reason to believe again, a reason to have some sort of peace and ending for all the suffering that they had experienced, all the people who had died. And she really brought a town to realize that it doesn't matter how small you are. It doesn't matter what you've done in your life. There's always time for more hope. And the company ended up having to pay them out at the end. And this is a story that doesn't just make you feel good. It's a story about someone taking the time to care And it wasn't a big business who cared. They didn't. They took what they wanted and they didn't care at all. It was one person, one single person who said, I'm not giving up. I'm here. I'm going to do this. And I'm never going to stop fighting for these people. And to me, that is super hopeful to know that there are people out there who are still willing to fight for the rest of us. And it's a movie that I've always thought instilled hope.
Hello, my name is Christopher Robinson. I want to talk to you about the 2008 film Slumdog Millionaire. It was directed by Danny Boyle, and it just ran the table on the Academy Awards in 2009. It won 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Score, Best Movie, Best Cinematography, and Best Director. It was great. It was a very in the end it's a story about 3 different children from the slums who go through difficult trials and tribulations, and the lead character named Jamal, who's played by Dev Patel as the older version, he gets to be on the Indian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he's on the last question. And he needs to find that last question. And you find out through the course of the film how he was able to answer all the other questions was because of the horrible trials and tribulations that he and his brother Salim and his childhood friend Latika go through over the course of the film. It's broken into 3 different parts. There's a younger children, the middle children, and then when they age up to adults. It's a beautiful film. It's mostly about perseverance because these kids, children from the slums of Mumbai, originally Bombay, go for a lot. The original book that was based off was Q&A, was much darker, and they decided to make this film a lot lighter. And more inspirational and more hopeful, which I like, and the world liked. It did great. It introduced people to seeing a cast of mostly Indians. Now, even though it has a cast of mostly Indians, it is not an Indian film. Dev Patel is British. Danny Boyle, the director, is British. It was done by Fox Searchlight Films, and that was one of the criticisms they had, was that it takes away from films that other Indian films have done similar subject matters. One example is Salam Bombay, which is kind of a 1980s crime noir film about another kid, a quote-unquote slumdog, who's stuck in the slums and stuck in the circle of violence and tragedy, because if you're poor, bad things happen. But that's not what this film is about. This film is about hope, because even though a lot of bad things happen to these kids and a lot of difficult choices are made, this film shows that through that perseverance, they're able to get through. In fact, one of the core things is that the horrible things that he went through gave him some of the answers to those questions, those life experiences, that perseverance, that diehardedness, gave him the answers to some of the questions that he needs to answer during the quiz show. And in the end, I am a romantic. It's a love story, and it's a love story between Jamal and Latika, and Jamal and his brother Salim. That love and perseverance and never giving up hope can get you through the darkest of times. And there are a lot of dark times in this film. But I love that. I love that aspect of it. But it's a beautiful film, and I think everyone should see it.
All right, everybody. It is Inauguration Day.
Yay.
We're recording our discussion. Not coincidentally, the inauguration, the whole idea for this topic was kicked off by Stacy, who couldn't make it in this one, as in our long nightmare was over. And so we brainstormed and came up with movies that gave us hope. So, kicking things off, this was a tricky subject for us, hope. And we had a lot of discussion about what hope meant, and what I think, Garret, you made a really interesting point about
Was it like inspiring or instilling hope?
Yeah, one thing about hope is that it's something that we know we can believe in because it can be possible, right? Versus, believing in something doesn't necessarily have to be real. Right. And so instilling hope in people was a kind of a lifelong thing, versus inspiring hope is something that makes you move, want to make action. Instilling hope is something that gives you a lifelong lasting gratitude and empathy towards other people. So it was a really interesting discussion. I remember we talked about it in our planning meeting. Are we instilling hope in people? Are we inspiring? Like, what is the difference between those and why it matters? And when we come down to it, I think that hope means a lot of different things to different people. But when we're talking about a general hope that really engages other humans, I think we want to instill hope for generations. A movie that somebody could watch years later and be like, wow, that's really hopeful. Versus inspiring might be generational context only, or it might be specific populations. So it may not be hopeful to everybody when you inspire, but instilling, I think, is good for all people at all times.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a coincidence that both of our picks were based on real stories. I think based on real stories gives you a little bit of an edge.
And I think it makes it more relatable, right? Things that can actually happen again, things that are possible, and things we want to believe in, versus inspiring movies while still being hopeful give us that little edge to be like, ooh, this would be fun to see, this would be fun to experience. But that instilling hope really makes sure that we are compassionate learners for the rest of our life and want to be empathetic to others.
Yeah.
Right. And I like that. I think one of the constant things for all our choices were perseverance. Just trying to going through struggles. But if you keep on trying, if you work hard, you'll be able to succeed and get through even for some of the most difficult struggles if you're just persevere. And that one of the things is that willingness to do the hard work, or willingness to go through that, is a very important aspect.
And I think that was you're right on the money. Perseverance kind of seemed to be what we really focused on, but it was also perseverance through really not great situations too. We all kind of and without that hope, I don't know that all these people would have succeeded, right? They had a hope in themselves. But all of our movies have something in common, that they wanted to help other people. They wanted to better human nature and mankind. And I think that's rare to find that in a ton of people. I think there are people out there, but people who just want to make the world a better place and fight for everyone else, no matter what the cost. And that perseverance is something that I respected completely and really kind of moved me. Because without that perseverance, I don't think the movies would have been hopeful at all. If they just would have been everything was granted to them easy, or they gave up, it wouldn't have really instilled hope in me. Instead of it would have been oh, that was nice, but everything came easy. And why is it that we have to work so hard for hope? Why does hope have to be, why hard situations have to come first before we can actually get that real hope out of it?
I think that's how at least I think we're taught that, I guess, especially in American society, or that that you generally, you're going to have to suffer, and but you have to believe that what you're suffering for is worth it. That even though the suffering occurs, that there will be, it will be worth it in the end, and that's where the hope comes from. Is that desire that you'll get through this, and it will get better because of you getting through it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, just from a storytelling perspective, being at bottom is kind of where you need hope the most. If you're already on top, you kind of don't need that much hope. But I do think I will say for Stand and Deliver, one of the things I like about it is that the circumstances aren't that bad. I was really glad they didn't paint it as some violent ridden, over the top high school where everybody was afraid to come to school. There's crime in the movie. It's I guess I came from what was sort of known as like a violent high school, so it just didn't. I was glad they didn't play that hand.
Right, and like I think you mentioned that comes from it coming from local perspectives and local views, because I think that does make a big point, is that whole showing it for what it is, but not glorifying the violence and just walling in it. So.
Yeah, which does that circle back to Slumdog Millionaire and some of the...
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. It's definitely a American movie, and I know you're not going to like me calling Danny Boyle, but he is a foreigner to India. I'll just leave it at that. And
oh no, it's like you call a Scottish person British.
I know. But it's just, yeah, it's just like I find it to be hopeful, and I find like Slumdog Millionaire, even though with its issues, that it is written totally from a foreigner's perspective. But I am happy that, I am happy that that people of color are the main characters. Indian actors are there, and it helped improve their credit. And it was nice to see such a full cast of Indian actors, which is great, and you don't see that in a lot of American films, unfortunately. This kind of reminded me of Black Orpheus, in that idea, like how important it was for it to occur, that for something to occur with and get so much praise and get 8 Academy Awards, which is still incredible.
Well, and not only that, I mean, just as a quick sidebar on that, like Dev Patel went on to play David Copperfield, right?
Right. So, he's still working. Frida Pinto's still working. They're still doing a lot of work. She's doing mostly voice work these days.
Yeah, I mean, really blew the doors open for like just diverse casting generally, and saying like this person is British, regardless of, you know, the color of their skin, right?
Oh yeah, or just or British or Indian, like Chopra, Priyanka Chopra, who she blew the doors open again later on with Quantico, bringing because she's very well known in India and as a superstar, and she was able to translate into American fame, which was great.
But I also think that something Slumdog Millionaire did that had a global impact is it really introduced people to Bollywood movies.
Yeah.
And we saw a spike in people who watched Bollywood movies after Slumdog. And, you know, Slumdog is not like a full-blown Bollywood movie by any means.
It's not a Bollywood movie at all, but it's like it has a little the Jai Ho scene at the end with the dance.
Yeah.
That was a little taste of Bollywood, so people could get into it.
But I think a lot of people took that, like, you know, if you'd never seen a Bollywood movie before, you're like, oh, wow, that was amazing. And then went and watched Bollywood movies and expanded their horizons as well. So as much as I think Slumdog Millionaire inspired hope, it also inspired, like, other people to reach out to cross cultures and be like, wow, I want to learn more about this. I didn't know that this was a thing. Like, what is this? You know, Jai Ho I remember it being on MTV just playing as a music video. Like, and people were like, it was nice to see like a completely different style of music and genre populating people's interest. So I really enjoyed that about how Slumdog Millionaire after its fact. And still today, I think people, you know, everybody say, oh, you remember the dance scene from Slumdog Millionaire? Like, people are still really excited about stuff like that. And that sharing of culture still, even if it's minimal, is important.
Yeah, like I said, give them a taste, get people into it. I felt that something similar happened with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragons. People started actually looking at a lot of wuxia and Chinese films, and it started a little boom in Hollywood as well. It's just getting people into that. Oh, there are other different stories, and Slumdog is universal in that it's kind of a quasi-universal because it's a love story, and we love love stories in fiction, and we love the Cinderella stories, some poverty rising through their station by dint of will or hope.
No.
Or, you know, catching the eye of a man.
It takes effort.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's what's so interesting almost about all of these stories is there's a specificity to the time and to the place. You have Erin Brockovich being a single mother and a former beauty queen, set in India, set in East LA, but the universality of the story shines through where, you're like, I don't have to be in that specific situation. My situation is hard in a slightly different way. Like, the corporations are beating me down regardless of, where like it could have been Flint, Michigan, and it could have been, a story about those people for Erin Brockovich. And I think what makes all these movies the Impact 10 is that they are so good in the specificity, but also in the inspiration to people who have nothing to do with those communities whatsoever.
All right. And I think going back to that instilling hope, especially with Erin Brockovich, you brought up Flint, Michigan, but like without Erin Brockovich's hard work and case law that was built around that, we may not have been getting results out of Flint, Michigan right now.
Yeah, they're actually now prosecuting people, which is great.
And, things like that, like people need to believe that corporations are held responsible, that you can fight the man and you can come out on top. And what I really loved about Erin Brockovich is, as a single mother, we saw her internal struggles, as a single mom. And I think so many people resonated with that when they saw this movie. Is like, work is beating me down, my job is beating me down, the man is beating me down, and I want to invest in this project, but almost I become punished when I invest my time, whether it's not spending much time with my kids or people judging me. And I think what Erin really did well is she was like, I'm not going to care what people do and think about me. I'm going to do what's best for me. And at that same time, I'm going to fight for other people. And that when she went around to each and every person and really gave them hope. I love movies. I mean, when we were talking about this topic, it instilled hope in me, but like she instilled hope in hundreds of people, real life people who had already given up. And it was only because she was willing to sit there, be with them, engage with them, and connect with them. And if that's all hope is, then that's a magical experience, is being able to connect with another person to make them feel better about themselves and make them believe in the future. And that is unbelievable. And something I think all three of our movies did, right? Like all of our movies really took to another person and been like, I'm here because I want to build up this other person. I want to have a better life for a lot of people. And at my own cost of my own well-being, I will get that goal to the end.
Yeah, it reminds me of the canvassing research that's come out, where you send somebody. I mean, there one study was debunked, but then it was redone. I think where they say you can actually change people's minds, but you need somebody who's personal to whatever the law that's trying to happen, right? So if it's a law about trans rights, you need trans people to like go and just come at it with, I'm not trying to change your mind, just I'm going to tell you who I am and what my struggles are like. And when you have that one-on-one interaction, it's not a huge change, it's a small change, but it is a change. Like they've kind of done enough research to show that works. And you're like, that is an incredibly difficult way to get a lot.
It's exhausting. It's totally exhausting, yeah.
But we saw that work really well with like, did your neighbor vote? The get out the vote part. Did your neighbor vote? It wasn't about people canvassing who they didn't know. It was about neighbors being like, hey, did you vote? And, then neighbors were willing to, let's go to the polls together. It was a very communal aspect. So I think, that canvassing, we do know it works if it is personal. You're right. Blind canvassing actually has been proven not to work. People do not change their opinion. Very, very rarely do people change their opinion, I should say. Not statistically significant. But people asking, even if it's not about their plight, like if it's not a trans identifying individual, but your neighbor supports trans rights, you're more than likely, if you engage with them, the more we talk about it, the more we make things normal, and the more we just talk about things in the open, like, hey, did you know that this was going on? Because often we may know one thing and Chris may know another and Nicole, you may know another, and we all think we know about it, but until we do and share with each other, and that's the experiences, and that's hope, right? Like, sharing in a common interest for the betterment in each other and our future.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's that communal feeling that we're in this together. One of the things in Slumdog Millionaire is when like the crowd looks at him and they see themselves in him. They're not jealous that he's doing so well. All of them are supportive and want him to do well. To see that if one person succeeds, we all succeed, and that joint feeling of that we're in this together. And like I think that's the inspiration, and that is where you get it for a lot of films and a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think another thing that came up for me when I was doing Stand and Deliver, and then when I saw all your pieces, they all sort of touched on the same thing. Is I always think of that quote by Raj Chetty. It's like one of the most depressing quotes anybody has ever made, and I'm going to butcher it, but so bear with me. I'm paraphrasing about how, he worries about all the lost Einsteins, like all the people in this country whose poverty never gave them a chance, and like one of them could be the next Einstein, and we didn't invest in that child, which is obviously very relevant to Stand and Deliver. But I think all three of the movies too, beyond Perseverance, were all about defying expectations, right? Like Erin, for no reason whatsoever, she starts reading these reports. She doesn't understand them. So she goes and asks somebody what they're about, right? But her feeling is, well, I can understand this. Like, I'm a person, I can read a piece of paper. Like, I don't need to be a lawyer. I can figure this out, and I can be of help. And same too with like Slumdog Millionaire. I mean, it is more extreme. Like the whole point of his thing is like, how is it possible that somebody like you could do this thing? Like our expectation, this doesn't match our expectations of you at all. And I think for me, the thing that really gives me hope is that sense of like, not all the Einsteins are getting lost.
I think also with Slumdog Millionaire, I think it comes it argues directly into that idea. What do we define as smart, and what do we define as intelligence? I mean, they're defining intelligence as knowing random trivia, which is such a weird way of doing it. It's just trivia is just something that you just find out because of your experiences, and it's very limiting. And I think it cut through that core is that, well, you're thinking that intelligence is only about trivia, but if I just have the right experiences, I know this trivia. I'll know these answers to it. It doesn't really talk about intelligence. It's just talking about your experiences and making it clear that we need to be more open on what we consider people to be smart. I mean, it takes a lot of craft. It takes a lot of guile. It takes a lot of effort to survive in poverty-stricken areas, and we dismiss them as we dismiss people like that as unintelligent, which is super problematic.
Yeah, and when we're talking about Erin Brockovich and that definition of intelligence, right? Like, she was a beauty queen. I mean, she was known for, there's several lines in the movies that refer to her having a hot figure and having boobs, but she showed that you don't need to go to law school. My favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, is when the lawyer's like, your files are missing so many of these information. You don't, where are all these numbers and everything? And Erin Brockovich is like, whose number do you need? And the lawyer's like, you did not memorize 643 people's phone numbers. And she goes through and she starts rattling off all of these numbers and phone numbers and their illnesses and whatnot. And it's like, intelligence comes in all forms. Erin was brilliant with numbers, yeah. Right? But like, she was never awarded that because she was first seen as a beauty queen. And once we look past someone's exterior and start to realize what's in their mind and what's in their soul, and I think that was a really important part to all three of our movies. It wasn't just that they persevered. That was great, right? That takes an internal, will and motivation to want to. They had good souls. They were pure people wanting to do good things, and they were fighting for it. Like, that's the perseverance. They were willing to fight for that. Not everybody has that. A lot of people have perseverance, but they don't have that drive and motivation. And without both, I don't know if you can get hope, because that is the definition to me, is that perseverance of surviving until you get the outcome that is positive.
None of the movies kind of pull its punches on what outcomes are actually possible either.
Right.
And, I think I said it in my segment too, like, I think if Stand and Deliver had ended when they all passed the AP, I would have been like, it would be so pat and so false. and that they all had to freaking retake the test because no one believed them. And then with Erin Brockovich, like they all wanted their day in court, right? And they didn't get it.
No, I think you're right. I think that, especially in Erin Brockovich, they all wanted to go to court and they were very honest with them. Like, this is a large corporation. It could take 20 to 30 years to get this done. And it took a lot of convincing. And what I think, if Erin hadn't made all those connections to start with and then vouched for her boss, nobody would have believed them. I mean, he was a great lawyer, don't get me wrong. Well, he was an okay lawyer, let's just say that. But he really knew what was going to be the best outcome. And he knew when to ask for help. Even though it didn't look like it was a good idea, he was like, this is too big for me. I need help. And Erin really struggled with that. She's like, this is my project. We've done this. We want to help these people. These people don't care. They're a big company and they don't understand. And Erin had to reform all those connections. And I think sometimes in Hope, there are setbacks.
Yeah.
That set us back. But in those setbacks, that's that perseverance that we keep talking about. And that's that will to really want. And I think we saw that in Slumdog, like he had setbacks continuously and Stand and Deliver. No one believed in these kids. No one. And that's a setback way beyond it itself. But like all of these things, and then it's like, okay, but I'm going to show you who I really am. And I'm going to show you why this matters.
Like, also, as you mentioned, that the whole idea of Slumdog Millionaire he wins all the money, but his goal wasn't the money. He was just doing the show just so Latika could find him. And that was his goal, is to be able to find her and bring together. And I think all three movies showed setbacks. Like he was a Slumdog Millionaire was shown to be. They thought that he must have been cheating, and they tortured him. And it's done nonchalantly, like it's a thing that happens. Sorry, I mean, like, and there's no apology or anything. It's the status quo, and like the whole thing with Stand and Deliver, and that they said, oh, they're going to really proctor you and watch over you and stuff like that, because they can't imagine someone could actually have this knowledge or have this experience of what we deem to be intelligence. So
I think for me, what resonates about all the stories is the sort of David and Goliath aspect of all of them, and it's also what makes me sad about all the stories, is there's so many Goliaths and so few Davids, and it definitely, I will say, Garret, for inspire versus instill, like it definitely gives me hope that there are Davids out there. It does not inspire me to become a David. So,
but hopefully we could help the Davids out there and give them the support or funding or just a chance that they need, or the showing of decency that sometimes they did need. Maybe we can help them that way.
Well, and I think there are a lot of movies that personally inspire hope within us all, right? And I think, we could all probably come up with an example real quick that inspire hope with us. But again, that instilling, what's that impact that's going to be long lasting to lots of people? I remember, when I was watching Shawshank, I was like, yeah, people getting justice, here the corrupts are coming down and whatnot. If you've never seen Shawshank Redemption, everybody, highly recommend. It's a great movie. But it was all about getting justice. And I was like, yeah, I love that. The bad guys got their due in the end and the good guys actually ended up getting away. So I don't know. Are there examples that you guys can think of that like inspire hope within you?
I mean, I think for me, when the topic first came up, the first thing that jumped to my mind was not a movie. It was a media project. So it was the It Gets Better project, the Dave Savage, Terry Miller thing. Because I think, just those videos were inspiring. But again, I think it sort of matches to what I was talking about before with like, you need to see somebody who's gone through it. So again, the specificity, like you're like, oh, this person was bullied when they were in high school too, or this person was left homeless because their family kicked them out, and they've made it to, financial security, maybe a loving relationship, like they're okay now, like, and that I think that to me personally is what I needed for hope when I was in my darkest moment. was that I needed to see someone like me was going to be like, was okay. So I knew that I could be okay too. So for me, I tend to gravitate towards those really smaller personal stories, notwithstanding the 8 full minutes, which I edited down that I talked about Stand and Deliver, because I loved it so much. How about you, Christopher?
Well, I guess like for personal, I would say one of the things is like the blockbuster Die Hard, because one, it's like I'm a romantic. I love romance, and it's a love story in its core, holiday movie. But it's also that it was just nice to see when I saw it the first time that there's just more hope for. This is a weird thing to say, diversity in Hollywood, because if you watch the movie, there are multiple Black actors who have speaking roles. Black, but came and reminded me, my wife, that it's male actors, of course, unfortunately, but there's 4 different speaking Black actors in the role, and they all have different characteristics and different archetypes, and it's nice just not to be the silly sidekick. And I was able to see like you could have the tech guy, the villainous tech guy, the smarmy tech guy person there, and like the suits, the government suits, and then you can have a cop who goes for a redemption arc, and then you have the limousine driver who's also just like the young hip guy, and it was just nice to say that usually in a lot of action movies you would just have the young hip guy, and it was just nice to see all these different character arcs, and multiple different types of Black people in a film, and especially in a blockbuster film, it's nice, and it was just very inspiring for me.
But I think you all bring up good points, and we'd be amiss if we didn't cover that. Like, hope means a lot of different things to different people, and we're not trying to take away everybody's hope, because I think it's really important that we all do believe in different hopeful things, because without that, I don't know that we could survive. If we only all believed in the one thing together, it's no longer hope, right?
Right.
So I think we'd be amiss, and I like both of your examples for different reasons. Like, Die Hard really has a personal connection to you, Chris, right? Like, it's coming off as like, oh, this could be me someday. And this is really nice not to have to see the same stereotypical role again and again and again. And Nicole, you're like, I could personally relate to this as well. When you were watching, like I was in a dark moment, and this really helped me. And those personal connections, I really think mean a lot for hope, because that's that internal perseverance we're talking about. And I think it's important for all of us to understand that hope can mean different things to different people. But at the end of the day, no one can tell you what hope means to you, and no one can take that away. We can debate it, we can talk about it, we can discuss it. But really what hope has to come from is internal. People can give you, we've all given you 3 great examples of like movies that instill hope. But you still need that inspiring piece too, to want to be better. And so I think that like, if you're watching this or listening to it, however your medium you are, think about something that really is hopeful to you, not just maybe something that inspires you. And then think of a movie that instills hope in other people, that kind of collectivism versus individualism, and what that means and why both are important. Because I think we'd be remiss if we said one was more important than the other. But I do think that like, because we are a social impact Movies That Matter podcast, we're trying to do things that impact a lot of people. But don't miss out that the things that inspire us are actually super important, and we shouldn't forget them.
Well, I can't think of anything to add to that wonderful wrap up. So all I will say is, remember, movies matter.
And so
do you.